2020 was looking like it was going to shape up to be one of my most successful years. Indications in training and the quality of athletes that I was training with was immense. I was in Portugal, and you're preparing for your season about to start, and you're in top form, and in a blink of an eye, it all started to change, and you get a message late at night from your coach that you now need to pack, and you need to be ready to get on an airplane in 3 to 4 hours, as at the time Italy was exploding with COVID, and at this point I think that the world was starting to realize the magnitude of COVID-19. And I remember having a call with my parents and panically saying that this is not good, and I'm coming back to Canada. And at the time I didn't know how long I was going to go back to Canada for. You think you're just going to hunker down for a little bit, as everyone else in the world kind of thought, and quickly you realized it's bad and it's getting worse, and then your race season starts to be in question, and there's delays, and your races are getting postponed, and then in a swift moment your whole race season's gone. And for the first time, as a person, you're sitting there as a professional athlete with no direction and no clue of what you're doing and why, and I think everyone can resonate with the idea of losing a bit of what am I doing? So it's 3 a.m. Watch is ready, lights are ready, got the headlamp already going. We've got 17 hours ahead of this huge voyage. So we're about to tick over to 3 a.m. So no time like the present. Get it going. My name is Karsten Madsen, and I am a professional triathlete. For the last 6 years, I've dedicated myself to finding my personal perfection and a better understanding for who I am and who I want to become. And through those 6 years, I've enjoyed a lot of success, and I've gotten myself to a place where I've been in traveling the globe and racing internationally, and I think a younger self of mine would be quite proud of the athlete that I became, and fortunate to have the backing and support of some amazing companies. And I think when you fast forward to today, sometimes it's easy to get lost in that you know, of you're just trying to be better, and what's the next step, that, you know, sometimes you don't take a look down, you know, memory lane and think, wow, I've actually come quite a far way. So it's been a good ride.
How's it feeling?
Ease off, breeze off, squeeze off. Feeling fine.
Nice.
Man, it was stunning.
Yeah.
Popping out of that tree line into like this. So rad.
I definitely knew what Everesting was. I had heard about it before, but never put much stock into it because race schedule would never really allow it. And, you know, because it's a ride where you have to get the same elevation gain on the same strip of road as Mount Everest. And, you know, that's, you know, loads of hours and loads of effort that you could never do when you have a race season going. And so all of a sudden it was like this perfect time of, you know, deciding that, wow, I should do this. Like, I no races, like, why not? Instantly I started planning, you know, where was I going to do this ride? And, you know, within Whistler and training here, I knew that, you know, Cadenwood is you know, one of my favorite hills to do intervals on. And instantly it was like, yeah, that's, you know, I'm going to take my road bike and I'm going to do it up Cadenwood. And I started running the math. Ultimately, the day that I went out for the Everesting, it was a beautiful day. It was like overcast, about 16 degrees. And, you know, I had my parents come in, as, you know, at the time, I hadn't seen them for quite a bit of time, and, you know, I kind of told them of the idea of what I was doing, and, you know, they came out to support. And what I think what surprised me most of this Everesting was how many people of the community just like ripped onto it. And, you know, before I knew it, you know, I had people, as I was doing my ride, blowing up my phone. And, you know, I remember on my Sunto, all the phone messages were coming through, and to the point of that I wasn't actually seeing the data that I wanted to see anymore, because like there was just so many messages coming in of support. And, you know, it was this kind of day that surprised me, and it set me on a path that, you know, changed the rest of my summer. Finishing the Cadenwood Everesting on my road bike gave me a sense of accomplishment that I had not felt since my last race, which left me wondering, now what? Could this be done on a mountain bike? And furthermore, could this be done on lots?
That was epic.
So as I finished lap 1 and climbing up Stonebridge, you know, your brain starts to rehearse and think through all the transition things that need to happen. And luckily transitions are not that foreign to me, as, you know, in triathlon, it's what we do. And you know, this is different, as, you know, it's not just putting on running shoes and going. It's food. It's, you know, making sure, you know, I put a new bottle in and, you know, have fresh nutrition and whatnot. And it was also, you know, the equipment side of the bike of, you know, getting the chain wiped down and re-lubed, and, you know, kind of make sure everything's ticking along just fine.
Trying to keep the, oh shit, I want the light to stay on. Shit, I'm so sorry. I forgot. Headlights. Yeah, because I just am worried. Shit, that's my bad. I meant to say that.
And one of the other things was that the lights needed to come off, as everything was scheduled out on how things were going to happen, and my dad, following the schedule as I wrote, you know, days prior and we went over, was following the schedule and took the lights off. But it's funny, in this moment of, like, you know, that whole time I was climbing up Stonebridge, I was thinking, make sure you tell him to keep the lights on, make sure you tell him to keep the lights on. And because I was panicked that my math was all of a sudden wrong, and that the sun wouldn't be up enough, and because it was at the time still pitch black. But even though days before I figured it all out, that it would be sunny enough when I came down, that I would only need the head torch for the descent, that, you know, I didn't trust it. And it's funny, you know, all of a sudden he's following his orders, and then I'm like, oh shit, the lights, they need to go on. And, you know, I think it was a big kind of, you know, all of a sudden me realizing, like, wow, I'm already having mental slips, and this is going to be a really long day. Obviously there's like 1,000 ways to get into the Mystic start. And obviously, like, the route is 100% dictated based off of, like, once you're at the flank, which is like here, this is simple. The single longest piece of planning came from route design, and we had to figure out how I was going to get from the valley floor to the Into the Mystic gate with a good ratio of gaining elevation but not being too hard. And then furthermore, had to figure out how to get from the bottom of Lord of the Squirrels down to the valley in the quickest way possible. And I was fortunate to bring in my friends Braden and Maddie, and we had a lengthy discussion on, you know, what were going to be the best route up. As everyone in here in Whistler knows, the west side has so many options up and down. And so I think in the end we ultimately picked a pretty sweet route. Starting the climb from Stonebridge, heading on to Sirloin and Darwin's, transiting with the flank to the start of Into the Mystic, followed by On the Rocks to connect to Lord of the Squirrels descent, then plummeting down leftovers to the valley floor and back to Stonebridge. Lap 2 was really special for me. It was my only solo lap, and, you know, I felt like for a month, you know, before it, I was running around with my head cut off, planning and you know, organizing things to make this, you know, event run smoothly. And finally it was like I was just riding, and it was me by myself. I'd made it through, you know, the night lap, and which was, you know, one of these big hurdles that I was over, and, you know, you're climbing up and it's getting lighter, and all of a sudden you start peeking into the alpine, and you just, like, sensation overload of, you hear the wind like whistle through the pines, and you start looking at the sky, and these like pinks and purples that, you know, you just think, is this like real life right now? And then, you know, all of a sudden the sun just peeks out, and it, you know, like you feel the warmth of it, and it lights up, you know, the rocks and shadows other things, and it's just this like moment that you're taking and absorbing it all in, of like the raw beauty. And for a moment you're not actually in the event that you're doing, you're just another person up there appreciating the elements and what the mountain, you know, what it gives you, and why people venture up to these high heights is as humans, we're just we're wired that way. So basically shipments are arriving all the time of the Cliff Bar and nutrition came. The shoes are ready. Again, it's preparing for every scenario. The bike A is ready to go. That's the one I plan to ride for most of it, actually, well, all of it. And then the backup bike is just finishing up in the shop. So today's been, the ever-ending phone calls and logistics and timelines, and it's just getting everything sorted and right. We spent a lot of time before the event actually planning out the entire day, knowing that, once I began riding, that my brain would, not be able to make smart decisions. We spent a lot of time, planning out the whole day in each half-hour segment, so everyone had, an idea of where they needed to be and kind of like what they needed to do. It ended up being a really smooth and efficient way to kind of categorize everything and what needed to be done. So basically trying to kill two birds in one stone. So we're doing the meeting with a little bit of recovery. So these Normatecs here, they are basically compressing my legs with air, and basically it helps with increased blood flow, and it just helps my muscles recover faster, and so that way on the day I'll have the freshest legs that I can. Honestly, it's just turn over every stone that I can, because this ride's insane, and these things make, I always think, a big difference in terms of making your legs feel light and not heavy and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why I look all funny in the space legs. So yeah, it was like getting my KOM. So I went on the hardtail that day and did a max effort, but I just kept going after. So then I went down, Lord of the Squirrels on the hardtail. The only thing I stopped to do was push the seat down for the descent.
Because there's no dropper on.
And yeah, no dropper on it, which is great. When you're climbing, it's super light bike, super responsive and whatnot. But then on the descent down on that hardtail, I was on Icon's front and rear and a hardtail, and I still came down 22 mid or 22 high for a time, which is it was at the time 40 seconds off my best time down. So I was kind of well, it's and I know in terms of the efficiency up, it was way better. So no, wouldn't ride a hardtail for the Everesting, but definitely in a heavy XC setup is best. Because again, you're you're not going to be descending as fast as if you're going to try and pin it, but you're also just relying on efficiency on the climb and stuff. But all right, so both I got basically two bikes. This is the bike that I will be riding for the event. So the difference between the two is that this bike here has 120 mils of suspension front and rear, whereas this bike has 100 front and rear. So again, this is why heavier, more aggressive trail, so it makes it needing kind of a beefier setup. The other thing is that this bike will have basically equipped, this is the rain tire setup. If it rains, I'll be using these tires, so that will be a bit of a call on how the weather is, but how it's shaping up will be fine. So one of the other bigger differences with this is again the race bike, what I'd race on in Xterra, and the bike that I train on here in Whistler, is you'll see that on it I decided to put a 180 mil rotor front and rear, just with how hot they'll get over the descent. It's important that they don't overheat, whereas the race bike typically only has a 160 setup. Because again, this bike is just to stay light and keep it as light as possible and whatnot.
Envy actually has these super easy seat posts. So on this bike as well too, you'll notice there's a dropper seat post. So it's SRAM's wireless system. So it's a very clean system. So that way when I'm descending, this allows me to come down a lot more safe and whatnot. And then it's just, all of it's wireless. It's just easy buttons that it just works. So that's the other main difference between these kind of two rigs and whatnot. So I think that's got our level off perfect. Now we'll just tighten up this other bolt here. Always grease your bolts when you put them in. That's the lifeblood of your bike.
So training for Everesting differed from my normal triathlon training in off-road tri as well, is that the West Coast trails are just so much more technical than what I race on. And so there was this balance of getting enough, technical training in versus just the fitness training. And luckily Whistler has this, large list of riders that, have bigger bikes than you and have bigger skill. And, I was fortunate to be able to ride with guys that, could show you they can ride at a higher rate of speed through a certain segment or with more flow. And, that stuff was really invaluable in my attempt towards this Everesting. The choice of trail ended up being simple, of that we chose Howler, as it's a trail that is super steep, super aggressive. The climb up is actually quite hard. It takes you up to about 1,300 meters. Get these great views of Whistler and Blackcomb, and you see Armchair and Wedge, and then you start descending down, and it's steep, it's fast, and you got the guys in front, and they're just ripping through sections at rates of speed that when I did that trail on my own, you're not going that fast. And so it was great to get this different perspective of how fast you can do a certain segment of trail and what the bike was able to absorb. And I think that you get these days where by the time you get to the bottom, you're tired physically from descending, and you're working it well, and you smell the brake rotors from how steep it is and how much you have to be on the brakes at times. And I think those are days that you just remember of having a good time with your friends, and riding bikes and getting views, and coming back home and sharing a beer and sharing stories of different parts of the trail and different things that guys did in front of you or behind. And it's all just makes for these experiences. That's why we all ride bikes. It's why we do what we love, and it's why we live in Whistler.
Well, that's a puncture. Ah! We're done.
I just got hosed.
Lap 3 is where the heat started to kind of kick up. It was the business time of the ride, and it was also a cool time as there was a lot of people that were starting to do their ride for the day. And I think the even cooler part was that there were some people that were coming, trying to look and link up to ride with me for a bit. And that was actually something that was really cool, is a lot of people that were, I didn't plan to have them there, but they came, they said some words of encouragement, and how they appreciated what I was doing. And that was like this motivator to keep pressing and pushing. And and then I had some of my friends that were planned to be there to help me kind of make sure I descended down safely, and getting to see them up, and you started seeing fresh faces, and you know, so lap 3, just this really like kind of ticked on, and you know, it was around lap 4 where I kind of got into the uncharted territories of the ride. If it was longer than what I had done in my preparation, and this is when I really felt the heat started to bug me, especially on the rocks up in the Alpine. That section of trail, there's no more tree cover and the sun just starts to bake down on you. And you know, this is where, you know, I started noticing some, you know, almost like a boxer taking on a few heavy hits, and I was quite hurting, you know, for a little bit of a moment. But then I kind of steadied myself and you know, got on the descent and felt like, you know, I was flying. And you know, one of the little known facts is that actually lap 4 was my PR descent on the Lord of the Squirrels trail. So, you know, lap 4 wrapped up, you know, after taking, I felt some blows pretty well.
Ready for dinner? Sit. Sit. Sit, sit, sit. Sit. Okay. Alright, some fresh water.
Another important part of the day was nutrition. I mean, ultimately the engine was going to be running hot all day, and everything needed to be calculated out at a, you know, a rough rate of burning calories per hour. And you know, I guesstimated that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 calories per hour, which was about 100 more than, you know, when I did Cadenwood.
I'm gonna take these 2 plus, you know, it's morning, so we'll go with the little fruit smoothie, tart cherry. 2 of these. This is what will go up with me for first lap.
So my sister and I spent, you know, time kind of packaging these bags so I could just grab a whole bag knowing that it had all the calories that I needed for the per hour base, and then I could grab the bag and stuff it in a jersey and be on my way. So that way, you know, in all these transitions, I didn't have to waste time with figuring out what I needed for each lap. It was like, here's what's pre-built, and then there was some extras if I felt like, you know, having a different this or a different that.
So now I'm gonna take an oatmeal raisin, because that's like, tastes like oatmeal. So it's like, you know, nice oats going in. And then we'll do another one of these. Might not be none. You want some? So the reason I'm picking Pringles, or not picking, but using Pringles this time versus the chips I used last time, was the fact that they just like stack reasonable. So as you take them out, you can just kind of grab these chunks and shove them in your mouth. It's really, you know, like hot tip, but attractive eating 101. Here. There you go. A little glycogen in you. That was a cookie. Nestor's Market, where the locals shop. Cookie.
Coming into transition after lap 4 is when I got to meet up with a friend and, you know, kind of teammate with Cliff Bar of Katarina Nash.
Katarina, what do you think about this?
I applaud everybody who's doing it, but it's not my thing. I'm happy to join for part of it, but man, it's an impressive effort. And yeah, cool to see, cool to be part of, but I don't think I would want to do the whole thing.
She was kind of taking the reins of the next 2 laps, which, you know, when I planned this, you know, you don't really realize how valuable someone's going to be. Obviously, you know, you pick everyone for a reason, but having Katarina for laps 5 and 6 ended up being, I think, such a positive on the ride of, you know, one, it was, you know, kind of knowing I was starting to hurt. That transition from lap 4 was when I started taking a lot more time off the bike, and when we started climbing, she was, you know, kind of reminding me, you know, and helping me to keep drinking, because at this point is when the body kind of felt like it started to not really want to take in calories or drink anymore, even though, you know, it was still really hot. And so having her around for lap 5 when we got to the top as we descended was so important, as the wheels came off for me, and, you know, all of a sudden I was on the rocks, and again I was hurting incredibly hard to the point of, you know, feeling like I needed to get off and push my bike, but I was just willing myself to turn the cranks around. And by the time we were on the descent, you know, it was the first descent, I had no interest in leading it. I wanted to sit on her wheel, and, you know, her being such an experienced rider and, you know, an Olympian in mountain biking, and it was just easy to sit on her wheel and take her line choices, because by this point my brain really felt like it wasn't working anymore. And, you know, as we finished lap 5 and we were pedaling back up Stonebridge, you know, every fiber of my body was telling me to quit and to stop. And, you know, ultimately, you know, that next transition was really long. Training is always a balance, and, you know, you got to balance, you know, this element of, you know, we needed the technical side, but really the most important part came down to the fitness and the engine. And, you know, for me, I knew that I couldn't ride my mountain bike every day, as, you know, it would have too much of a fatiguing effect, and I wouldn't be able to get the hours needed. And so using the tools that I had available to me, you know, I decided that I need to get off the mountain bike and get on my gravel bike. I've always wanted to ride my gravel bike to Squamish and back, and, you know, the Sea to Sky Trail is this amazing trail that takes you primarily off-road all the way into Squamish. And, you know, it's a trail that you get these stunning views, and it's, you know, so well built, and it's honestly a perfect trail to rip the gravel bike through. And, you know, it was quick to, you know, I knew the suspects that I was gonna text and my friends to drag them out on this ride. And I think, again, a cool part is you just have all these people that want to say yes to these like crazy rides. So it was a fun day to laugh and to just get those simple endurance miles in that, you know, ultimately were going to charge me up to powering me up into the Mystic. And, you know, I guess really you think, you know, of all the preparation, you know, having these days where you spend most of the day laughing and, you know, having a good time with your friends. Obviously put me in a great position to have as successful as a day as I could have. I've really learned this in my career as an athlete, that having fun and being happy is the simple key to success. It's always such a win when you can link aerobic bliss kind of rides with friends where you don't have a super strict workout with intervals and targets. The bliss really comes when you can just ride and let the miles tick on. We arrived in Squamish and we all felt it was time for a flavor change from blocks. Naturally, goofing around comes rather easy to me and the boys, so I was happy I had some people to humor me. There's always a time to be serious and a time to have fun.
This is probably one of the better spots to get a flat. I mean, the gorgeous mountain range, here the river. We've got Mac on time as we're timing Matty for his tire change proficiency.
WORCA is Whistler's off-road cycling association, responsible for building and maintaining Whistler's trail networks.
The WORCA trail system is a big part of my life. I love mountain biking, and coming to Whistler was so eye-opening just to see the variety and like the quality. It's amazing, and it really makes this area so special, I think, so super important.
Trail network in Whistler is world-renowned. People come from all corners of the planet to ride here, whether it's the bike park, the trails in the valley, whatever the case may be. And WORCA is recognized as a world leader as far as trail advocacy goes.
WORCA has done so much for the community, and I felt when I had this pause of racing, it was the right time to do something to give back to this community, and WORCA was just the obvious choice. As with my profession of racing, I was utilizing their trail network and appreciating all the upgrades and new trails that they were building. And so with the fundraiser, it just made absolute sense that WORCA be the benefactor.
Lord of the Squirrels is super unique. It travels up into the Alpine, and it was a multi-year project. Lots of people were involved. It's accessible to a lot of riders. It's not necessarily something that you have to be an expert to get up there and to ride back down.
Normally it takes a lot of time and effort and commitment to get up into those zones. And the Lord of the Squirrels network and Into the Mystic allows people of all abilities to sort of meander up there on their own pace on a fairly safe and easy environment to get up there. It may take some longer than others, but as long as you have enough food and water to sustain yourself, you get to enjoy the Alpine.
What WORCA means to me is doing things the right way and building trails in a sustainable way. The transition at the end of lap 5 was, me sitting in a chair for quite a bit of time. Contemplating, how I was going to be able to finish and accomplish this ride, and you know, you spend so much time training and, you know, willing yourself to do things. You know, when you've done 3 sessions already in the day and you have a 4th, it's that mindset that, you know, says, well, I'll do that 4th session. And, you know, I was using all that kind of healthy mindset to rally myself to keep this ride going. Climbing up lap 6 was pure hell. It was very hot. You know, the body wasn't responding. I wasn't really wanting to take on fuel. Katarina was on me and helping me, you know, with, hey, you should be drinking, hey, you should be eating, have you eaten? And you know, it's actually kind of, to me, you know, sitting here today, it's like, I actually can't believe I made it up to the top. And you know, once we finished on the rocks, which was, you know, Katarina was actually filling her bottle in streams and pouring it on me, as, you know, at this point I was starting to overheat, and I, you know, depleted of sodium and, you know, wasn't replacing. And, you know, we had a conversation at the picnic table, and, you know, for me it was I just couldn't see myself being able to do that climb again. And, you know, the real task at hand was me getting off the mountain safe. And, you know, Katarina took the descent down again, and, you know, following her line, and, you know, her kind of checking in to make sure I was good. And, you know, as we came back down and near the end, it just slipped out on gravel and had my first, you know, kind of crash of the ride, and kind of reinforced that, you know, my brain was no longer working. I wasn't making decisions. I was just literally robotically following. And, you know, it's a hard thing, as, you know, you just want to say that you can do it, and you'll just do another lap, and then it's only a little bit more after that. But the reality was the risk of going back up, I felt, was incredibly high. And yeah, the decision was made that I wasn't going to continue my ride.
The Squirrels win.
2 weeks to do it, ready?
Yeah. Oh my god. That's a wrap on Everesting. Not doing it anymore.
We're gonna do Everest.
Quit. Come on, logbook. So 161 kilometers. 15 hours, 17 minutes. What else here? Calories, 9,372. Recovery time, 119 hours. So ascent, 7,028 meters. Descent. Bummer to not get it, but there was like this point where if you go back up and then you lose it, and especially in the night, it's like way too high risk, and literally like you can feel it just like starting to go away, where each time you like get to on the rocks and you do those final like steep pushes up, and like the heat, even that lap was hot up there, like because the sun's still just beaming on you. So yeah, so that was yeah, the Squirrels won today.
Don't worry, honey, you won in my eyes.
Ultimately, as I sit here present day, you know, I don't regret the decision of pulling the pin on the ride. You know, I felt going back up into the Alpine would put myself in a really precarious position in terms of, you know, I knew that I didn't have the smarts to descend properly, and so I felt that I was putting myself at high risk of needing search and rescue, and to me that would have made the event such a large failure in my eyes if, you know, I was needing their services. And, you know, I think it's a big lesson that, you know, it's a hard pill to swallow, to gut check yourself. And, you know, in this town, everyone wants to do rad things that makes people's heads turn. But at some point, when things no longer add up and make sense, you know, it is the time to pull the pin. And as hard as it was, I, you know, to this day know that it was the right decision to do and the best for, you know, all parties involved. I've had so much time to think about, you know, everything that I could do differently or should have done differently. Ultimately, you know, when this whole journey started, you know, it started doing the Cadenwood one on the road bike, and that was 11 hours. And that was my longest ride. As you know, before that it was 4.5 hours was my longest ride. And so you take this one where, you know, I was well into 16 hours or something, and it was just, it's such uncharted territory, and in a way I was so green to these like long events. I'm very good at shorter distances, and you know, I think the big one, if you know I was to do it again, is, you know, starting at, you know, 12 at night and do more of, you know, the laps at night when you're fresh. Because with the lights and stuff, I could see everything, and roll into, you know, when it gets hard, having lots of daylight. I think that was one of the big things. And, you know, there's some stuff with gearing I felt that I would change, and, you know, as well, suspension, having a little bit more suspension, a little bit more of a beefy bike, but still something that climbed really well. These were things that, you know, I've written down, because the reality is that this is, you know, for lack of a better word, this has haunted me, that, you know, I wasn't able to complete this. And, you know, as badly as I kind of wanted to do it this summer, ultimately there's a big part of me that knows I need to get back to the racing that kind of led me to this in the first place. And but in no means do I believe that this chapter is, so to speak, closed. There's another chapter to be written. It's just it can't be yet.
I see you, Johnny. You see him? Yeah. Don't worry, I'll take care of you. Aw, you're okay. Hi. I found you. I'll take care of you. I'll love you. I'll feed you. And that's your uncle? Hey. Hey, little guy.
Okay, well first, make sure it's good. It works for the day. Thomas Cruise of the movie.
Thank you. What are you doing?
You want to be the Thomas Cruise? It's like, I'm getting some pats, man. No, have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Just like, man, these hands are, they're all bruised in here. You can see. Yeah.
There it is. Have we hit? Did we make it to 9 o'clock? Braden, what time is it?
Fucking 9:05!
All right, we're in the clear.
I know, I looked
Right at
at
the
you
end.
too quick. I'm like, meh, approval.
The second half was perfect except for that look, so.
Okay. I was like, after basically like lap 3, it was just like, why the fuck am I doing this? It's so hard. It's like so hot. So hard. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming out. One of the cool takeaways post-event was, you know, the social media element of it, of how many people reached out, and I thought there were really cool messages of people that, you know, on one hand were like, oh, I've done 1 lap before, and you know, you kind of challenged me to do 2, and I thought that was really cool, seeing that, or you know, people messaging being like, I didn't even know what Lord of the Squirrels was, and I went out and rode it because it looked so cool and amazing. And it kind of has rolled into, you know, a cool development that I've teamed up with WORCA now to have everyone challenge themselves of their own Lord of the Squirrels Everesting challenge. I think it's going to be a really cool event. I have, you know, a lot of my same sponsors backing it and prizing it. The Everesting Lord of the Squirrels Challenge will run from August 14th to 29th, and you will have 3 different categories to pick from. The first one's probably my favorite one. It's called Party Everest. It's get 80 your friends, and you go ride 1 loop of my official route that I did in my ride, and you combine your GPS files to get the elevation gain of Everest. Then the next event that you can sign up for is the Solo Everest. It's that idea of, you know, if you've done 1 loop, why don't you challenge yourself to do 2? And if you've done 3, why not 4? On that same official route. The last one that you can pick from is the 14-day vertical monster, which incorporates all of Whistler's trails. You have 14 days to see how much vertical you can get on any WORCA trail. So if you want to go do Dark Crystal, Howler, Lord of the Squirrels, you combine it all, and there's going to be some really great prizes for all those different events. For more information on the event and what prizes you can win, follow the link below.